For years, I thought I knew the story of the webcam. It felt like one of those technologies that just emerged. A natural progression from still photography, destined to serve the burgeoning needs of video conferencing or perhaps some early, clumsy attempts at live broadcasting. The reality, the true origin story, is so much more profoundly human, so delightfully absurd and so utterly Cambridge, that when I first uncovered the full details, I simply had to pause. It was a moment of genuine awe, a reminder that the grandest innovations often spring from the most mundane, even trivial frustrations. Imagine 1991. The internet, as we know it, is a whisper, a network largely confined to academic and government institutions. The World Wide Web is still years from mainstream adoption, a concept few outside Tim Berners-Lee's lab at CERN even grasp. Mobile phones are brick-like curiosities. Personal computers are still largely a productivity tool, not a portal to the world. Yet, in this pre-digital landscape, a team of researchers at the University of Cambridge, fueled by late nights and a particular kind of British ingenuity, inadvertently laid the groundwork for a technology that would define our connected future. And they did it, quite simply, for a coffee pot. This isn't a story of grand visionaries predicting the future. This is a story of inconvenience, a story of engineers and computer scientists tired of making wasted trips down a flight of stairs, only to find the coffee pot empty. This is the tale of the Trojan room coffee pot, and how a solution to a minor office annoyance became the world's first webcam, an unexpected ancestor to every live stream, every video call, every security camera you see today. It is a testament to the idea that sometimes the most revolutionary acts are born from the simplest desires. The crucible of innovation, Cambridge in the early 90s. To truly appreciate the genesis of the webcam, we must first transport ourselves to Cambridge University, specifically its computer laboratory in the late 1980s and early 1990s. This was, and remains, a hallowed ground for computing science. Names like Alan Turing, Maurice Wilkes, and Roger Needham had already cemented its legacy as a cradle of digital innovation, pushing boundaries long before the dot-com boom. The atmosphere was one of intellectual rigor, a deep-seated curiosity, and a distinct, almost playful, approach to problem solving. It was a place where brilliant minds tinkered, where theory met practical application, and where the lines between work and intellectual amusement often blurred. The computer laboratory itself was housed in the old Cavendish building, a labyrinth of offices, server rooms, and shared spaces. Among these was a particular office known as the Trojan Room, located on the third floor. This room was not just a workspace. It also contained the communal coffee machine. For the researchers and postgraduate students working on the second floor, the journey to the coffee machine involved a walk down one flight of stairs, a short corridor, and then the critical moment of truth. More often than not, the anticipation would turn to disappointment. The pot, an 18-cup filter machine, would be empty, leaving a trail of unfulfilled caffeine cravings and, more importantly, wasted time. This seemingly trivial issue was, in the context of a busy research environment, a genuine source of low-level frustration. Imagine the cumulative time lost, the minor interruptions to deep concentration, the slight but constant annoyance of making the trek only to find the jug bone dry. This wasn't just about coffee. It was about efficiency, about minimizing pointless distractions, and about the unspoken contract of shared resources. In an environment where every minute of focused thought was precious, even a 20-second wasted trip added up. The problem wasn't merely observed, it was felt. And in a place populated by individuals hardwired to find solutions to complex problems, even a simple one like this began to percolate. This was the backdrop. A highly intelligent, slightly eccentric group of individuals, deeply enmeshed in the foundational work of computer science, confronted daily by a minor, yet persistent, logistical hurdle. The solution, when it came, would be elegant, technologically advanced for its time, and utterly unprecedented. It would draw upon the very cutting edge of nascent networking technology and digital image capture, all in service of a hot, full pot of coffee. The stage was set for a quiet revolution, born not of ambition but of a shared, daily caffeine dependency. The genesis of the Trojan Room coffee pot, the specific problem, as we have established, was the coffee pot. Its location, just out of sight, meant that anyone wanting a cup had to make a physical inspection. This was more than just an inconvenience for those on the second floor. It was a distraction. In an academic environment valuing deep work and uninterrupted flow, such trivial interruptions were ripe for automation. Enter Quentin Stafford Fraser and Paul Jardetsky, two young researchers at the computer laboratory. They were among the most frequent victims of the empty pot pilgrimage. It was around 1991 when the germ of an idea began to form. They were working with the Acorn Archimedes computer, a British-designed machine renowned for its powerful ARM processor, a lineage that, remarkably, continues to influence mobile computing to this day. Crucially, the lab also had access to a frame grabber, a piece of hardware that could capture a single frame of video and digitize it, turning it into an image file. The pieces were there, waiting to be connected. What if, they mused, a camera could watch the coffee pot for them? The initial setup was charmingly rudimentary, a true hack in the best sense of the word. They acquired a cheap monochrome camera, a relic from an earlier video conferencing experiment that had since been abandoned. This camera was pointed directly at the coffee pot, which sat patiently on a table in the Trojan Room. The video feed from the camera was then routed to the frame grabber, which was plugged into an Acorn Archimedes machine. This computer, running a bespoke program written by Stafford Fraser and Jardetsky, would capture an image of the coffee pot approximately 3 times a minute. The captured image was initially low resolution, just 128 by 128 pixels, and displayed in 16 shades of gray. It was enough, however, to clearly show the coffee pot and, more importantly, the level of coffee within it. Once captured, this image was then transferred across the laboratory's internal network. At the time, this was a relatively fast Ethernet network, connecting all the machines within the lab. A simple client program, running on the researchers' personal workstations, would fetch the latest image and display it in a small window on their screens. Suddenly, the coffee pot was no longer an unknown quantity. A quick glance at their monitor provided instant intelligence: full, half full, or, most critically, empty. This was a purely internal solution, designed for the immediate needs of the lab. It was a local network utility, a digital peephole for a shared resource. The concept was elegant in its simplicity and hugely effective in its application. It solved a real, if minor, problem, saving countless trips and allowing researchers to make more informed decisions about their caffeine consumption. Little did they know that this humble, monochrome image of a coffee pot, shared only within the confines of their building, was about to be unleashed upon the world, sparking a revolution in how we perceive and interact with distant realities. The stage was set for the coffee pot to transcend its local utility and become a global phenomenon. From local curiosity to global phenomenon, for nearly 2 years, the Trojan Room coffee pot camera remained an internal fixture, a beloved and practical utility for the researchers at Cambridge. It was a quirky, yet indispensable, tool, saving countless wasted trips and providing a quiet backdrop to their daily work. But the world outside the computer laboratory was changing rapidly. The early 1990s saw the gradual, then explosive, emergence of the World Wide Web. Initially conceived by Tim Berners-Lee at CERN as a way to share information between physicists, it was beginning to spread to other academic institutions. Crucially, in 1993, the Mosaic web browser was released by the National Center for Supercomputing Applications, NCSA, at the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign. Mosaic, with its graphical user interface, made the web accessible to a much broader audience, moving it beyond text-based command lines and into a world of clickable links and embedded images. This was the turning point. The Internet, which had been a text-heavy domain, was suddenly capable of displaying visuals. The computer laboratory at Cambridge was an early adopter of the nascent World Wide Web. They quickly set up their own web server, primarily for internal documentation and sharing research papers. It was here, in 1993, that the coffee pot cam underwent its most significant transformation. Accounts differ slightly on who exactly made the suggestion, but it was almost certainly driven by the collective spirit of playful experimentation. Had the brilliant idea, why not put the coffee pot image on the web? The implementation was surprisingly straightforward, leveraging existing technology. The Acorn Archimedes continued to capture images of the coffee pot 3 times a minute, saving them as a GIF file. A small script then moved this GIF file to the lab's new web server. Visitors to a specific URL could then load a web page that displayed this image. Because web browsers in 1993 did not automatically refresh images, users would have to manually reload the page to get the latest view of the coffee pot. It was clunky by today's standards, but it worked. The moment the Trojan Room coffee pot went live on the World Wide Web, it became, arguably, the world's first true webcam. It was no longer just an internal convenience. It was a publicly accessible, constantly updating visual feed from a remote location. The impact was immediate and unexpected. News of the quirky Cambridge coffee pot spread like wildfire across the fledgling Internet. It was featured in early online publications, discussed in Usenet groups, and even picked up by mainstream media outlets, fascinated by this eccentric peek into a distant university lab. Thousands, then tens of thousands, of people from around the globe began checking the coffee pot, sometimes hourly. It became a bizarre, endearing global curiosity. People would email the Cambridge researchers, commenting on the coffee level or expressing their joy at finding a full pot. It was a proof of concept, not for video conferencing, not for security, but for the very idea of persistent, remote visual monitoring, delivered over a global network. The humble coffee pot had, without knowing it, ushered in the age of the connected camera, turning a local solution into a truly global phenomenon. The impact and legacy the Trojan Room coffee pot cam, once a local hack, quickly transcended its humble origins to become a global internet celebrity. Its fame was unprecedented for such a simple application. Journalists, always eager for a human interest story within the seemingly abstract world of computing, latched onto it. The coffee pot was featured in newspapers and television reports across the world, from the BBC to the New York Times. It became a quintessential example of the Internet's quirky potential, a testament to the fact that groundbreaking technology could emerge from the most unexpected places. More importantly than its celebrity, however, was its profound impact on the developing concept of networked video. Before the coffee pot, the idea of a continuously updating image feed from a remote location, accessible to anyone with an internet connection, was virtually unheard of. It effectively demonstrated the practical feasibility of live, or near-live, video over IP networks. While the images refreshed only a few times a minute, it was enough to prove the concept. It was a live stream, years before the term live stream entered our lexicon. The coffee pot cam directly inspired a wave of similar projects. Suddenly, people realized they could point cameras at anything and put them on the web. Early webcams popped up everywhere, at the San Francisco Zoo, showing animals, at a weather station displaying current conditions, in offices showing empty chairs. Each of these projects built on the conceptual groundwork laid by the Cambridge coffee pot, experimenting with different refresh rates, resolutions, and content. It democratized the idea of broadcasting, turning anyone with a camera and a web server into a potential content creator. Its influence extended far beyond these early curiosities. The underlying principles, capturing an image, digitizing it, sending it over a network, and displaying it remotely, are the fundamental building blocks of almost every camera-enabled technology we use today. Think of video conferencing platforms like Zoom or Microsoft Teams, security camera systems that monitor our homes and cities, live broadcasting on social media platforms like Twitch or TikTok, or even the ubiquitous front-facing cameras on our smartphones used for video calls. All of these owe a conceptual debt to that modest black and white image of a coffee pot. The coffee pot cam itself continued to operate for a full decade after going live on the internet. For 10 years, millions of people worldwide could check the coffee level in the Trojan room. But like all good things, it eventually came to an end. In 2001, the computer laboratory moved to a new building. The old coffee machine, now a relic, was finally turned off and disconnected. In a fitting tribute to its internet fame, the actual Trojan room coffee pot was auctioned off on eBay, fetching a respectable £3,350 from a German news magazine. The era of the original coffee cam had concluded, but its legacy was firmly cemented in the annals of tech history, a quiet pioneer whose reach would far exceed its modest goal of preventing unnecessary stair climbs. The unintended consequences, while the Trojan room coffee pot camera was conceived as a benign and practical solution to a localized problem, its global dissemination inadvertently opened up a Pandora's box of considerations, particularly concerning privacy and the very nature of public versus private spaces. In 1993, the internet was still a wild frontier, largely unregulated and unburdened by the complex ethical frameworks that now govern our digital lives. The researchers at Cambridge were focused on functionality and problem solving, not on the philosophical implications of their creation. At its core, the coffee pot cam was about observing a shared resource within a specific, controlled environment. The initial internal network feed was a simple utility among colleagues. When it was put on the World Wide Web, however, that local context dissolved. Suddenly, an 18-cup filter machine in a private office building in Cambridge was being watched by strangers from every corner of the globe, while the camera focused only on the coffee pot itself, a relatively innocuous subject. The very act of broadcasting a live feed from a physical location presented a new paradigm. This was perhaps the first widespread instance where a camera was always on and publicly accessible. It blurred the lines between private workspace and public spectacle. While no individuals were being directly observed, the existence of the camera itself hinted at possibilities. What if the camera had been pointed slightly differently? What if it had included more of the room? These were questions that few were asking in 1993, but they laid the groundwork for future debates. The coffee pot cam, in its charming innocence, set a precedent for the constant visual surveillance that is now commonplace. It demonstrated that digital eyes could be everywhere, silently watching. While its initial intent was purely practical and humorous, it indirectly contributed to the normalization of camera usage in public and semi-public spaces. Today, we navigate a world saturated with CCTV, dash cams, doorbell cameras, and the expectation that our actions might be captured and shared. The Trojan room coffee pot, in its own way, was an early, gentle nudge in that direction. Furthermore, it highlighted the ease with which information, once digitized and put on a network, can escape its intended audience and context. What was meant for a few dozen academics became a global curiosity. This rapid, uncontrolled dissemination of imagery set the stage for later discussions about copyright, consent, and the viral spread of content, issues that plague our social media landscape today. The coffee pot didn't cause these issues, but it was an early, tangible example of the power of networked visuals to transcend boundaries. It was a harbinger of a future where visual information would be abundant, instantly shareable, and increasingly complex in its ethical implications, all stemming from a simple desire for a hot cup of coffee. What this story means today, the journey of the Trojan Room coffee pot camera, is more than just a quirky anecdote from tech history. It's a profound parable about innovation itself. Its origins, born from a mundane office frustration and solved with ingenuity, perfectly illustrate how the most transformative technologies often emerge from localized problems rather than grand, sweeping visions of the future. The researchers at Cambridge weren't trying to invent the webcam. They were trying to avoid walking down the stairs for an empty coffee pot. Yet, in solving that small, specific problem, they inadvertently unlocked a vast new realm of possibilities. Today, the concept of a webcam feels almost quaint. Cameras are not just on our webcams. They are embedded in virtually every device we carry, every public space we inhabit, and every aspect of our digital lives. From the high-definition video calls that connect us across continents, to the elaborate live streaming setups of professional gamers and content creators, to the pervasive security systems that monitor our homes and cities, the legacy of that humble coffee pot is ubiquitous. It's in every TikTok video, every Zoom meeting, every surveillance feed. The simple act of digitizing and transmitting an image over a network, pioneered for a caffeine fix, has become fundamental to how we interact with the world and each other. This story reminds us that technology rarely develops in a vacuum. It is a reflection of human needs, desires, and sometimes even our minor annoyances. The brilliance lies not just in the technical solution, but in the lateral thinking, the ability to apply existing tools and nascent technologies to an unconventional problem. It also underscores the often unpredictable trajectory of innovation. What starts as an internal lab experiment, a curious hack, can evolve into a global phenomenon, shaping industries and altering societal norms in ways its creators could never have imagined. The Trojan Room coffee pot story stands as a testament to the power of curiosity, the value of tinkering, and the surprising paths that innovation can take. It's a compelling reminder that the next groundbreaking technology might not come from a multi-billion-dollar research lab with a 5-year plan, but from a small team of brilliant minds, simply trying to make their daily lives a little bit easier, one cup of coffee at a time. It's a powerful lesson in the serendipity of discovery and the enduring impact of a truly good idea, no matter how small its initial scope. Subscribe if you want more stories like this.